Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Ward. Fantastic show for you tonight. We're going to talk about National Signing Day. It is today, or at least the early National Signing Day, the state of college football. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about potential quarterbacks for the Falcons in 2024, as well as potential coaches and a ton of other stuff. But we're going to start off with Arthur Blank's comments on Arthur Smith's job security. And basically, he said what we've been talking about all week. Obviously, he's going to finish the season. But he didn't sound, he was very non-committal, I would say, in as far as his status in 2024. He definitely didn't say, I mean, he said, hey, we back him. We're going to see how we finish this season. I think he's coaching for his job. I mean, that's the way it sounded to me. Now, I think really the Falcons just kind of have to show a pulse as a team. As long as they compete and look better, I think he'll probably keep his job, even if they lose 2 out of the next 3, maybe even if they lose all 3. But I think they have to show a pulse. They have to look better than they have and not give up on the team. And I think that's probably the only, I don't want to say it's the only way he gets fired, because if they go 0-3, you have to think they probably fire Arthur Smith, right? I mean, 0-3, I think even if they look competitive, they probably fire him. If they go lose 2 out of 3 and they have a pulse, but obviously, if he loses the locker room and they get blown out by the Bears, because listen, the Bears, Colts, and Saints are all winnable games. I don't care where they're being played. The Falcons are just as talented, if not more talented, than all 3 of those teams. They should win 2 out of 3. They could easily win 3 out of 3. But if they lose all 3, I think he's out. If they don't show a pulse, if they get blown out in a couple of these games, I think he's out. But I would definitely say there's no way that his job is safe as it was a week ago.
Yeah, however unlikely it seems, the Falcons can still make the playoffs, and I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but they can. Mathematically, they have not been eliminated from the postseason. And so for that reason, it would be entirely too premature for Arthur Blank to pull the trigger on or pull the chair on Arthur Smith. So it's so much smarter to just let it play out instead of a knee-jerk reaction type move, which Arthur Blank has never done. I'm not going to speculate on what it's going to take. Though if you force my hand, I guess it would. To me, it's mostly intangibly based than it is tangibly based. It's not going to be wins and losses. It's going to be how they win or it's going to be how they lose games, how the players are responding. By the time you guys see this, an article will be up on the site. Go check it out, Sports Talk ATL, about I'm wondering how the Falcons players are going to respond amid these, job security questions. Are they going to rally behind their head coach and be like, hey, no, we love Arthur Smith. Let's get this guy, to 2024. Or are they going to lay down and quit? Obviously some guys are playing for their jobs, the impending free agents. But other guys, they're locked up for the foreseeable future. Kyle Pitts, a la Kyle Pitts, does he really care? I don't know. We're going to see over the next these next 3 weeks. But I want to talk more macro instead of these 3 weeks micro. I want to talk a little macro, and I'm going to bounce some things off of you, Chase. I saw Albert Breer talk about this, and I couldn't agree more that the Falcons, and I've been saying it for weeks now, pretty much this whole season, that the Falcons haven't invested in the quarterback position. A couple of backup caliber contracts to Marcus Mariota and Taylor Heineke, and then a measly 3rd round pick and Desmond Ridder, which, effectively is nothing nowadays because we just cut Jalen Mayfield, a 2021 3rd round pick this offseason. So obviously that shows you how important it's not a premium draft pick. That's what I'm trying to say. So the Falcons have not invested heavily in the position thus far. And it's clear why. Albert Breer pointed it out. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's a very enlightening conversation he had with Rich Eisen. Basically, the Falcons didn't want to go all in on a quarterback that they weren't in love with. And that makes a lot of sense because how often do you see it not work out for teams? There's so many more examples of a team going all in on a quarterback and it not working out than it does work out. And I think that's smart. You don't want to be on the hamster wheel of never good enough to win a championship, but too good to actually, be in a position to land a franchise-altering player in the draft. So, he referenced kind of a 45-win basketball club. Ironically, it's where the Hawks currently sit. They're just on that hamster wheel, never going to be good enough. So I do think that is worth, remembering that this Falcons regime hasn't necessarily had their guy. I know a lot of fans are going to say, well, they put Desmond Ridder in there and they spoke highly of him. Yeah, of course they're going to speak highly of the guy. They don't want him to feel like the team, the club, the organization as a whole isn't behind him. But I do want to say that, like, if we're talking other than what the Terry Fontenot, Arthur Smith, and Arthur Blank have actually said, they have not invested in the position. Now, we're in year 3 and they haven't invested in the position. So that is also pretty damning. What do you think, Chase?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, there's not many situations that have kind of come up. I mean, if you look at these last few draft classes, there haven't been very good quarterbacks in the draft. I mean, you can think CJ Stroud. Maybe the Falcons could have, gone to the Bears and gone to the first overall pick and taken CJ Stroud. But most people thought that Bryce Young should have been the top overall pick. So if they were going to make that move, it was probably going to be for Bryce Young. And of the very few, if they had made that genius big brain move, everyone would have been like, wow, they not only moved over to the first overall pick, they took CJ Stroud over Bryce Young. There weren't a lot of teams. So just assuming that they were going to do that is probably pretty ridiculous. You look at the free agent situations, the trade quarterbacks. We probably dodged a bullet with the Deshaun Watson thing. I think we can all agree with that. Lamar Jackson, Albert Breer mentioned the injury thing. And even aside from the injury thing, I don't think there was any chance Lamar was going anywhere from Baltimore. The Ravens weren't going to let that happen. So I think we don't even need to have that conversation, even if the Falcons – maybe the Falcons shouldn't have came out and said anything. Like, why do they need to come out and say anything? You could have
that is the one issue I did have with it. And I'm sorry, Chase, to cut you off. I'll throw it right back to you. I just want to be so clear that any team, not the Falcons in general, any team was never going to get Lamar Jackson unless they made an unprecedented $300 million fully guaranteed contract like the Browns ended up doing. It was $240 in that case, but Lamar signed after him, so it would have been uptick. That the Ravens were like, oh, that's ridiculous. Of course we're not going to match that. But it didn't make sense for the Falcons to do that. No team was going to be able to get Lamar Jackson away from Baltimore. So stop saying that. Now go back. Sorry, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I don't think it matters if the Falcons were interested or not. They weren't going to get him. So there really aren't too many things where I'm like, wow, the Falcons really passed on that and they really missed. Now, there are some things that you can kind of be pissed off about when you talk about other things not in the quarterback situation, like the fact that you have Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London, and you're not using them and stuff like that. I think those are bigger issues rather than the quarterback, not necessarily of the team, but just like on the coaching aspect of things. Like that has to get better. But I understand what they did with the quarterback situation. It's the reason I think they're going to get another year. But now they are down to this one off season where they absolutely have to get a quarterback. So they didn't take it in the 3 chances. Now they don't have a they don't have a choice. They've pigeonholed themselves. Like they have to go after a quarterback this offseason. And the one good thing you can say is of all the off seasons, this is the best one by a country mile. There are tons of quarterbacks that they could like in the draft. There are trades that are potentially going to be available when we talk about Justin Fields and Kyler Murray and stuff like that. So they better pick the one that they like the most and go all in. And they're going to have to do that. And we're going to see that this offseason. So if you're a Falcons fan, you can at least be excited that that's coming because that is 100% coming. One last thing I want to say, because it's gotten mentioned a couple times. I don't give a crap what Taylor Heineke does. Stop talking about him as a potential option. We could win the next 3 games. We could go to the playoffs. We could beat the Eagles. I do not give a crap. He is not going to be the starting cornerback in Atlanta next year. Stop that nonsense. If that happens, they should get fired before week 1 of next year. Both of them, Fontenot and Smith.
I can't believe, I mentioned it on yesterday's show that I can't even believe people are bringing that up as a potential possibility. It makes me want to bang my head against the wall. Taylor Heineke's shown you who he is, and a 3-game sample size isn't going to change that. I do. Back to the offseason, a new quarterback is coming, no matter what, with or without Arthur Smith. I think you can, take that to the bank. Bet your bottom dollar on there will be a new quarterback in Atlanta for 2024. I think obviously this benching cemented it. So I do think, to my point that the Falcons haven't really gone in. They've been a little conservative. They don't want to, waste a bunch of money or first-round pick on a guy. They did go after Watson. Obviously, they didn't feel comfortable matching the fully guaranteed money. But I think, this is kind of a bad situation for ownership to kind of force the regime into a situation maybe they don't want to be in. And I get the fact that 3 years, you haven't had an actual quarterback,
I want to get into the quarterbacks. I just want to cut you off because this is a good point to go into the quarterbacks for 2024 and the options.